Welcome all about stocks, and today we're going to go over why we might see a 100 basis point rate hike instead of the 50 or 75 rate hike that the stock market is expecting. Now, Powell has very often said that Paul Volcker was his hero back in the 70s. I don't know if hero would be quite the best term. However, let's go with hero. Now, back in, let's see here, July, then they did an article saying that it's unlikely that we'd see in 100 basis point. However, when I read it, they were saying that with fuel going down, that there wouldn't be such a the fuel was the main purpose, that we wouldn't see the rate hike be 100 basis point. However, the reason that the fuel was not going to be going up is due to the fact that Biden was releasing 1 million barrels per day, and it was for international tensions, basically the EU, and he's also was allowing for E15 on gasoline, which also, please don't put that in your vehicle, is very bad for your vehicle. I know everyone says, hey, it's not that bad, but it is. It'll tear up your engine very fast. So if you're using E15 to save, what is it, 5 cents, don't do it. It's going to tear up your car, and it's going to cost you more in the long run. What's it say here? Engaging with oil and refining companies. Basically, they're saying, hey, it's not worth it for us to turn on these oil manufacturings to save some, or to pump more oil. So he was saying, hey, do what you need to do, we'll make it worth your while. Now, this was back on June 22nd that he did this. June 22nd. Now, basically, that brings you to September 22nd if we're under the assumption that they started on that day. Now, I'm going to assume that this ran all the way to July 1st, which means that on October 1st, this holiday ends, that 3-month holiday. So on October 1st is the end of it. So on October 1st, you will see fuel prices start to go up. This is my assumption. I'm not going to read everything to find out whether it's 9 days or the 9-day difference does not make that big of a deal, and I'm sure it's not going to make that big of a deal to the feds. Now, moving to Putin. Putin is warns the EU over the gas price cap, due to the fact that EU is saying, hey, we're going to put a gas price cap, and they're only going to pay Russia a specific price for oil. They're assuming, I guess, that Putin's going to go along with this. I don't see how that's going to work. Putin's the seller, and EU's the buyer. I don't believe that's how a free market works. However, they're expecting Putin to go along with it. EU's expecting Putin to go along with this. And keep in mind that Putin can still sell to China and India and many other countries who are not in the EU. So Putin does not have to sell to the EU. So once again, you have, let's see here, Putin warns of the winter freeze that will be coming upon the EU. Now, this is to say, hey, you better start paying up or the EU will freeze. Now, I'm assuming that the United States will start producing as much as possible due to the fact that the EU will be paying dearly for fuel, crude oil, and natural gas. They have no choice. It's either buy from Russia or buy from the United States. I'm sure they could buy from Brazil and Saudi Arabia, but Saudi Arabia once again is in with Russia as part of OPEC. I think they can buy from Brazil, but I believe if they buy from Brazil, it would be more expensive due to the fact of shipping. I don't see how they can work the shipping out with Brazil. We're a lot closer and easier to ship. So I believe Canada, United States is just a lot cheaper and easier to ship. I don't know who else they can buy natural gas and crude oil for as cheap as we can ship for. So that's basically why we'll start producing as much as possible. Now, if the United States is producing as much and then selling to the EU, this is going to create a supply constraint problem as well as a demand problem. One, we are the demand for multiple countries, 2 continents, as well as the supply of multiple countries as well as 2 continents is just outrageous. One, the United States does not produce that much crude oil or natural gas. We have a kind of a policy where we try to produce only as much as we need. Not only that, but most of our natural gas, or not natural gas, but crude oil comes from OPEC, which, to be honest, we can supply ourselves with natural gas, or I keep saying natural gas, crude oil. We have probably enough just in Texas alone. However, we have Alaska. We have plenty of crude oil in Alaska. If we are to try to get off crude oil, then we can probably start using our crude oil reserves, and we have, I think it's enough crude oil to probably run the world off crude oil just alone in Alaska. Don't quote me on that. I'm not 100% sure. I just know that back in World War II, I believe it was Roosevelt who was saying that Alaska was enough to keep us in the war for, I think it was like 10 years or something. So, once again, don't quote me. I'm just going off something I read about in history back in high school. So, don't quote me. It's just something I remembered like 18 years ago. Now, back to the main problem. So, the reason that you're going to see, sorry, blowing myself up here. Now, the reason you're going to see the possibility of 100 basis points is, yes, inflation has probably actually gone down. and it's probably due to the energy that the energy that we have saved due to Biden's plan, or Biden's what did he actually call this? The Biden tax holiday. Okay, so Biden's tax holiday probably actually saved on inflation or slowed inflation, but it is only for 3 months, and it was um, a hidden or hidden inflation would probably be the best way to say it. However, you have the Fed who knows this, and everyday people and probably a lot of companies out there may not know this. The Fed completely aware of this. They talk to the president. They talk to the energy part of the company or White House or whatever. Once again, not that aware of politics. However, they do talk to all of them. They are aware. So, come October, right after they have to make this decision whether or not to raise the basis points, are they going to strive for the same basis points that they've been doing for the last 2 basis point hikes, or are they going to try to crush inflation? Now, you have Jerome Powell, who continuously talks about Volker. He keeps on saying, hey, I know I have to get ahead of inflation. And the last time he did his rate hike, he said that he was a big fan of Paul Volcker, and he wanted to mimic Paul Volcker. Now, I'm very surprised that he did not Volcker us last time. I would be very surprised if he did not do it this time. Now, I believe personally that the reason that he did 275 basis point hikes was so that he could try to curb inflation a little bit, so that he could do a little bit of a Paul Volcker style hike. It might not be a large, 200, 300 basis point hike, because that could shock the economy. However, 100 basis point hike may not shock the economy as much. However, it could still, curb inflation. Now, if it does not, then he still sets himself up for another 100 point inflation hike next time. So now he's setting a precedence up for 100 point basis hikes for the next few rate hikes. You see what I'm trying to say for the future going forward. Now, you already know that the Fed does not care whether the economy goes into a recession. Jerome Powell already said that he does not expect this to be a soft landing. He already said that there will be pain to come. The last speech he gave, he said, hey, there's going to be pain. He's expecting job losses. He's expecting pain. So would you really be surprised to see a 100 basis point hike? Would you be surprised to see a 150 point basis hike? So you had a news article say, hey, there's possibility of a 100 basis point hike. So don't be surprised to hear in a few days when he comes out and speaks to see, hey, a 100 basis point hike or further. Don't be surprised when they do their basis or they're raised to see 150 point basis hike. Prepare yourself. So I'm just saying that there's a possibility. Now, the markets are planning for a 75 point basis hike. They are planning so well, it's at 91%. Last time they did, like a 90% assurance that it was going to be 75%, then it rallied off of the 75%, or the 75 point basis hike rallied. So do you think Jerome Powell is going to come back and say, hey, that's a great idea, let's do it again so the markets can rally? I don't believe it will. I don't believe he's going to come out and say, hey, let's do that again so the markets can rally. I believe he's going to try to change it up and continue the markets on the downward trajectory. So keep it in mind, there's a possibility that he might try to Volker us. So if you found this helpful, if it changed your mindset and got you thinking a different way, please like, subscribe, and share this video. If you don't like, you don't subscribe, and then Jerome Powell ends up doing a 100 basis point hike, come back, like, subscribe, and share my video and help me out. So every like, every subscribe promotes my videos, and it also helps me out. So keep me in mind if things change. Thank you. Have a great day.